Hey, what's up, guys? Okay, so chapter 255 came out a few days early, and it's safe to say that this chapter did not fill me with anywhere near as much dread as the last week's chapter did. Although I do gotta say that the first 3 pages took me on such like a wild roller coaster ride when it came to Noelle. Like seeing her use Sea Dragon's Roar, like probably her strongest attack, at 0 feet range at Vanica is like, yo, Noelle is going in. She doesn't care. She's about to whoop Vanica's ass with this one attack. So I just got done reading the chapter for the first time, so I actually might be a little bit more hyped up and, scatterbrained during this review than I usually am. But before I get into the rest of it, I do want to say that I noticed something in this chapter that I missed in the last few chapters, or at least in the last week's chapter. The first thing is the fact that I missed that apparently Noelle was actually naked, which kind of threw me off guard because when the fight started, she did have clothes on. She was fully clothed. And then I guess at some point when she turned into her Valkyrie armor, she became naked. And as far as I'm aware, that's not a requirement for her Valkyrie armor because back when she first got it, she was wearing her Royal Knight's clothes. And even after she activated for the first time, when she deactivated it, she was still wearing those Royal Knight robes. So yeah, a little bit confused by why she's actually naked. I mean, I know she looked naked when she was in her mermaid armor, but I just kind of assumed that was the aesthetic of the armor, that like it kind of transformed her clothes into the armor itself in some way, and that they would just go back to normal when she deactivates that form. But apparently not. And the second thing that I noticed that's actually kind of more relevant to the chapter is that when Megikuo and Vanica are actually talking, Tabata gave them both 2 separate types of text boxes. Vanica's is kind of normal, basically just the same kind of text box you see everyone else have. And then Megikuo, his text box is actually Megikuo's text box is actually shaped a lot like that circle with the dots around Vanica's eye that she has in her dark form. And I mean, yeah, man, if this was in the last chapter, I just completely missed it. I mean, I guess I was just so distracted by how fucked Lord Bertica seemed to be in that chapter that I completely glossed over this little detail. But, I actually kind of dig this because I always kind of dig when characters, whether or not they're sharing the same body or if we have characters who have basically are the same person but different personalities when they have different types of text boxes. In fact, I'm probably going to have on the screen right here example, which would be the Batman Who Laughs from DC Comics. Even though he is basically just Batman because he's a twisted evil version, they gave him a more like evil looking text box. So it just kind of dawned on me that Noelle really did use Sea Dragon's Roar at 0 range. And you can see from the art that she was basically caught up inside the dragon's mouth as well. So I'm wondering, would that have affected her? Because if it would have, if she would have actually taken damage from that, considering how damaged she already was at that point, potentially with how strong she most likely used, or how much mana she used in that attack, she possibly could have ended up doing some serious damage, if not basically killing herself by trying to take out Vanica. Which, if that actually is the case, if Noelle actually would have took some damage from her own attack and trying to attack Vanica with it, then yo, that really just shows how much commitment and how serious Noelle is about taking out Vanica and avenging her mom. And not only that, about protecting Lord Bertica. Like, Noelle is willing to completely risk her life, even take her own life, if it means taking out Vanica as well. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Noelle is actually right to do a kamikaze type attack in order to take out Vanica, especially when she doesn't know if the attack would have done enough damage to actually take out Vanica, considering they really hadn't done much damage to Vanica at all. Although, if Noelle actually continues to be this reckless, I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to end up making Vanica like her even more. Which, speaking of Vanica, after Noelle deactivates her, she runs out of mana and her Valkyrie form deactivates and she kind of kneels down on the ground naked in front of Vanica. This is when Vanica finally realizes Noelle is Aeshir's daughter, or at least has a striking resemblance to Aeshir. Which kind of threw me off for a loop there, because it's like, alright, well, she had her Valkyrie armor activated at one point, which looked extremely identical to Aeshir's Valkyrie armor, which we see through the quick flashback we get of when Vanica and Aeshir fought prior to this, that Vanica clearly saw Aeshir in that form, and yet she did not put 2 and 2 together. She did not realize that Noelle actually resembled Aeshir. But once Noelle is kneeling on the ground naked, that's when she finally kind of puts things together and realizes the resemblance between the 2 characters. Now, I do want to point out that over the past few days when I was watching other people's reviews of last week's chapter of Black Clover, I did see in the comment section a few people mentioning that they think that due to Noelle's attack landing on Vanica in the last chapter, that in this chapter it would remind Vanica of Aesir and her fight with her, and kind of connect the dots in her head that Aesir and Noelle are related in some way. And a lot of those comments were actually posted prior to the spoilers coming out, which revealed the fact that Vanica would end up remembering her fight with Aesir. So I just want to, throw this out there to give credit to those guys who actually did call out the fact that Vanica would finally connect the dots between Aesir and Noelle. I personally figured that it wouldn't end up happening in this chapter, it would end up happening in the next fight between these two characters. And speaking of Aesir, this chapter kind of changed my thinking of her, or kind of like my mentality when it came to Aesir's character, because we see Aesir in like the little quick one-panel flashback of her and Vanica's fight, and we see that she's very bloodied and beaten up, just like how Noelle is in this chapter. And I don't know, it just kind of, in my head, the way everyone's always talked about Aesir and how strong she was, how undefeatable she was on the battlefield, I kinda, and I mean, again, we knew that Aesir had died at some point in the series prior to Noelle growing up. And of course, at first we all were kind of led to think that she had died during childbirth, giving birth to Noelle, which is the reason why Noelle's siblings all kind of treated her like crap growing up. And then at the end of the reincarnation arc, we end up finding out that no, that's not the case. Noelle's mom actually died because of the fact that she was cursed by Megikulo. And even when we ended up finding out that Megikulo was the cause of Aesir's death, in my head, because of how unbeatable she had been portrayed to be prior to this, I always kind of thought that just like how Yami's holding Dante to basically a standstill right now, that Aesir probably did the same thing with Megikulo and Vanica, that she basically held them back, and this is what led them to cursing her because of the fact that they couldn't just outright beat her. They had to place a curse on her in order to kill her. But as we see through the one-panel flashback, they did a pretty big number on her. Like, she was pretty heavily wounded in that fight, which was the first time we'd ever seen in any image of Aesir her with any type of battle damage on her. Now, that being said, it could still be the fact that they ended up fighting to a standstill, because as Vanica's about to leave the chapter, she says that the reason why she's not killing Noelle is because that when they fought against Aesir in the past, by taking some kids hostage, and we don't find out what kids they were, maybe they could have just been, some random kids off the street, or they could have actually been her own kids. When Vanica did that, Aesir gained a significant power boost that actually made her more interesting to Vanica. So maybe that power boost was actually enough to actually kind of lead it to fight to a standstill, which caused Vanica to place a curse on her because she couldn't outright kill her. And Vanica's actually hoping the same thing will end up happening with Noelle, because instead of killing Lord Pratika, just like she had planned to do after the last chapter because she became bored with her, she ends up kidnapping Lord Pratika in hopes that just like how Aesir got a power boost when she held those kids hostage, that because of the fact that Noelle was friends with Lord Pratika and fought so hard in order to protect her, this will give her some kind of power boost so that when the next time they fight against each other, she will be a more worthy opponent and be more entertaining to her. Which, I'm wondering what's going to end up happening, because we don't see Undine in this chapter. And as you probably know from my last reviews, or my last few reviews, I predicted that Undine would end up going over to Noelle in order to give her that kind of power boost that she would need in order to actually fight against Vanica on even ground. But I always threw in the question, well, what happens at the end of the arc? Because after the arc's over and Vanica and the Dark Triad are defeated, Undine would have to go back to Lord Pratika, because Lord Pratika is the queen of the Heart Kingdom, or the princess of the Heart Kingdom. She is the protector, and the Great Water Spirit is tied to the ruler of the Heart Kingdom. So unless Lord Pratika ended up dying, Noelle would actually end up having to relinquish that new power that she gained. So the alternative that I actually ended up coming up with is that instead of Undine becoming contracted to Noelle, we just have Noelle have a contract with another water spirit. Because, I mean, even though we've only heard of the 4 great spirits so far, and we've only really seen 3 of them up until this point, we know that Noelle's not going to end up getting the 4th one, because that most likely will be the great spirit of Earth. Because those are usually considered the 4 elements: fire, water, wind, and earth. We know because Noelle's magic is water, she would need to be tied to a water spirit. And nothing, as far as I'm aware, that the pilot has presented to us about the series so far suggests that there is no lesser spirits, that only the 4 great spirits exist. So it is perfectly within the realm of possibility that Noelle could end up getting one of the lesser water spirits who would give her just enough power boost to actually fight on even pairing with Vanica. Or hell, Tabata could end up introducing a brand new spirit type of character to support Noelle and actually give her the power boost. I mean, who knows, maybe angels exist. I mean, we have demons, we have spirits. Angels, isn't that, out of the realm of possibility? Noelle could end up getting like the Great Water Angel or something. And it actually would go with the trio of characters who are obviously the main characters for this arc, which is Asta, who has the anti-magic demon, Yuno, who has Belle, the great wind spirit, and if we give Noelle like a water angel or even just a water spirit, then each of the three main characters have some kind of support character that's not really human that gives them a significant power boost. So when Vanica decides she was ready to leave, this is when we finally check back in with Mimosa and Lickitung fight and see that neither one of them really has the advantage over the other. And when Lickitung realizes that Vanica's about to dip, he kind of pleads with her that, hey, wait a minute, he's going to be finished with her in a second, and he can join her. And Vanica just coldly says, you disgust me, and just blows him up, or, begins to process of blowing him up. And what is with Tabata? What is with Tabata and blowing up characters, like blowing up fodder characters who are evil? I mean, we saw it with all the elves. Literally every time an elf was about to be destroyed or defeated, they were ready to blow themselves up. I mean, I don't think any of the elves actually managed to detonate, but it's still, he seems to have a fetish when it comes to blowing up characters. And that's what he ends up actually doing. He uses Vanica to activate her curse magic to detonate all 5 of the Dark Apostles that she brought with her. Which, according to Vanica, the blast is supposed to be like miles in radius. And we see she was not kidding when we actually zoom out from the continent and see all 5 explosions go off. Now, what was interesting during the scene was the fact that I hadn't realized how close 3 of them were. Because when you look at the 5 explosions, there's 2 off in the distance, and they're pretty far distance from each other. I'm imagining that Gajo was probably at one of those because of how far away he said he had to go in order to get to the opponent he was fighting versus where he was originally when he was protecting Lord Pratika. But the other 3 seemingly were very close, which I would imagine those 3 were probably Charmy, Luck, and Leo. Also, I kind of like the way Tabata used the next 3 panels on that same page with the explosion to basically kind of give us the illusion of like we're following the sound of the explosion all the way from the Heart Kingdom over to right outside of Space Kingdom back to the fight between Dante and Yami, where we see Yami has landed another hit on Dante. And it doesn't seem like Dante has actually landed any attacks on Yami because he doesn't seem to have any kind of damage on him whatsoever. Now at this point in the fight, we have no idea what percentage Dante is at. He could still be at the same 65% that we left him at, or he could have possibly went up past that during the fight at some point. We don't know because of how far away we've been from the fight. But what we do know is that at the end of the chapter, Dante decides, because of how strong Yami seems to be and the fact that Yami's actually been able to keep up with him up to this point, which of course, I mean, it's Yami. We haven't really seen the guy struggle that much throughout the entire series. But because of how impressed he is with Yami, he decides to go full power. Now, I don't know if full power means he's going to go to full 80% of, where he's still in control, or if full power means we're going to see Dante's version of the same form we just saw with Vanica and Megikulo, where he's going to actually share his body with Lucifer. I mean, really, regardless, we know that because of the fact that Dante is going to be Asta's opponent for this arc, and Yami does have to lose, that Yami's not going to be able to handle this fight. And even if Yami does actually manage to handle himself well enough to survive the attacks that Dante's going to throw at him, something's going to happen, like maybe one of the Blackpool members are going to get injured or, attacked during a fight, and Yami's going to have to sacrifice himself, just like how Julius, when he was fighting Patry, had to sacrifice himself in order to protect the civilians. Yami's probably going to have the same kind of fate, end up getting kidnapped just like Lord Pratika in the next chapter. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all there is to talk about from this week's chapter. I'm actually really hyped to get the next one to see the continuation of the fight between Dante and Yami. We took a long break from it, and I'm glad to be back finally. And on top of that, I'm actually kind of a little interested in going back to the Heart Kingdom and seeing what the result of those 5 explosions were, because Vanica was confident that Noelle might be able to survive it, but considering she didn't even acknowledge Mimosa, I'm wondering, exactly how much damage it's actually going to end up doing to her. I'm sure Mimosa's going to end up being fine, but I do kind of wonder, what this is going to do to the continent of the Heart Kingdom. Like, is the Heart Kingdom going to be completely in shambles? Are there going to be like hundreds of civilians dead, entire cities destroyed, or are they going to find some way to basically contain the explosions and keep everyone safe? I'm interested in seeing what happens with that. But that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I'll catch you guys with the next chapter. Peace.